Today is the beginning of November and the weather looks just like November. It's rainy, it's cold, it's foggy. The leaves started to fall from the trees. So my first challenge from today is going to be finding trees that are still looking interesting and compositions that are still looking interesting. Now the fallen leaves can look interesting, but they also cover some beautiful leading lines through the forest. So because of that, I'll have to be a little bit more creative. Another challenge is going to be this heavy fog. Usually when you have heavy fog, it's a little bit difficult to photograph because you only get silhouettes. But I think I'll have some tricks to overcome this. Now, because I don't know what I'm going to find in the rest of the forest, how much or how many leaves are on the trees and how many on the ground, I'll just have to start with this composition over here. That when I'm having some beautiful trees that still have some leaves on them, the fog is not that thick in this area, so I may be able to create something interesting in the shape of a panorama. The focal length that I'm using is 70mm. The settings are f11, ISO 100 and 1.6 seconds. I also use the polarizer, and a good thing is that there's no wind, so it's one less thing to worry about. Sometimes it's a lot easier to look for compositions without the tripod. So I'm just looking for the composition, and when I'm executing the photo, I'm using the tripod. In a way, I think you move a lot faster. You have a certain feeling of freedom that you don't have to set up the tripod that often. I found this group of trees. There are 3 trees, and I think I can frame them in an interesting way. There are also opportunities to frame them in landscape format, but also in a portrait framing. And I think I can also take some close-up shots of these trees. So just from one location, let me show you how many photos you can get.
We set sail into the moon. Tilt our tails to the morning dew. Our plans and schemes seem so serene.
I noticed this tree without the leaves, but it looks spectacular. It's only the silhouette of the tree, but the branches are kind of like emerging, as you can see, from one area over there, and they just reach for the sky, and it's a really interesting tree to photograph. So that's one of the tips that I have for you. Always look for interesting trees. Now I'm photographing it in a portrait format. I'm staying really low and close to the trunk of the tree just to capture the entire development of the branches. Now I don't have a really wide angle lens. I only have a 24mm, but I think it's more than enough for this situation. From the starting of this vlog, I never left the initial place. Over there is the tree with the branches. That is the group of the 3 trees that I photographed earlier. And again, this is the tree from the first panorama. Learn to explore the place better. Today is one of those days when I'm photographing at every step. Anywhere I look, I see a composition, I see an interesting tree, I see something that it's worth stopping. I don't know how many hours I'll stay in the forest, but I'll keep exploring the place and also share some things with you. A very important thing is that today I could not do it without a tripod. The exposure time is always 1 second or 1.6 seconds. I'm guessing that when I'm going to be inside the forest the exposure time is gonna go even longer than this, maybe 2.5, maybe 3 seconds, because it's a lot darker over there. One of the things that I'm trying to do when I'm in the forest in a moment, in a day like this, is not to rush it. Oftentimes I find myself that I'm almost running through the forest trying to capture every frame that I could do, and I'm not slowing down. I think it's one of the most important things for a landscape photographer, because you're starting to notice more and more elements that a normal person that would just walk through the forest would not. As I'm hiking up on the trail and more into the forest, as you can see, fog is becoming a lot thicker. Also, the trees have no leaves over here. It's like it has an eerie feeling, kind of like a creepy location. There are still elements of interest. There is a small tree that is basically growing from an old tree. That could be an interesting thing to photograph. And also these silhouettes, if I can find something interesting, these silhouettes can look really beautiful.
Amongst the stars, red, gold, and green. Oh, we gave it all in the autumn fall.
Now, because there are no leaves on the trees, the exposure time, it's not longer than before. It's shorter even. So I was mistaken down there. It's 0.5 seconds. The focal length is 50 millimeter. Again, f11 ISO 100.
We danced like flames around the sun. Angels flew where our hope had come.
I think this shot shows very well the size of the place. When you're photographing in panoramas inside the forest, you get the feeling of the place. You get the feeling of how big the place really is. Another composition that I think looks interesting is holding the camera like this, pointing the camera up. It's not always about the obvious compositions. You always have to be 360 degrees aware on any axis if you want. Today it's cold, so one tip is to be sure you have your gloves, your hat, you are dressed to be warm. Also, you don't have to dress too much, because otherwise you're going to get sweaty and again you're going to be cold. Another thing is that with you should always have some liquids. I don't recommend hot tea. I recommend water that is at the normal temperature. In terms of photography, yes, there's a thick fog, but if you stay close to some elements, you can get some of the photo in clear, and then the rest of the photo into the foggy area, and this creates mystery, and some interesting compositions may appear. You also need a tripod with you. Without a tripod, it would have been impossible to do these photos at ISO 100. Also, in a situation like this, when I have no leaves, I still search for the trees that look interesting and still have leaves on them, and I explore the place as much as possible in that location. But the minute I found out that, okay, the rest of the forest doesn't have leaves, I try to go for silhouettes. So I'm always adapting myself, and I'm not going in a place with a certain idea, and if that doesn't happen, then I get a block. So hope you like these tips. Until next time, keep on photographing. Is the only way to get better. Don't forget about my ebook or my workshops. The links are in the description of this video. You have all the details there. Thanks for watching, and bye-bye.